Hello, students, and welcome to lesson number 4 from the supplementary reader Moments. The name of the lesson is In the Kingdom of Fools. Now, this lesson is a Kannada folk tale from A.K. Ramanujan's Folk Tales from India. It is believed that fools are so dangerous that only very wise people can manage them. Who are the fools in this story? What happens to them? Now, Kannada is a regional language mainly spoken in the state of Karnataka. This story is a Kannada folk tale. Folk tales are stories passed on from one generation to another. It is taken from the book Folk Tales of India written by A.K. Ramanujan. First of all, let us discuss the title of the story. In the Kingdom of Fools, which means the state where people are not so wise, they are not at all intelligent. In this story, the king, his ministers, and his advisors are all fools. That means they are not so wise and intelligent. When these kind of people rule the kingdom, then what happens is what is told in this story. Now, in the kingdom of fools, both the king and the minister were idiots. They didn't want to run things like other kings. So they decided to change night into day and day into night. They ordered that everyone should be awake at night till their fields and run their businesses only after dark and go to bed as soon as the sun came up. Anyone who disobeyed would be punished with death. The people did as they were told for fear of death. The king and the minister were delighted at the success of their project. One day, a guru and his disciple arrived in the city. It was a beautiful city. It was broad daylight, but there was no one about. Everyone was asleep, not a mouse stirring. Even the cattle had been taught to sleep by day. The two strangers were amazed by what they saw around them, and they wandered around town till evening, when suddenly the whole town woke up and went about its nightly business. So, in this story, we can see that there is a kingdom in which all the people are fools. The king, the minister, they were idiots, and they didn't want to run the administration and things like other kings. So, they decided to do the very opposite of what everyone did. They decided to change night into day and day into night, and they ordered everyone that they should be awake by night and till their fields and run their businesses only after dark. And as soon as the sun came up, when the sun rose, everyone had to go to bed. And they also, proclaimed that if anyone disobeyed, that person would be punished with death. Now, the people were very afraid when they were told that they would be killed, and so they obeyed. The king and the minister were very delighted at the success of their project. And one day, a guru and a disciple came to the city. It was very, very beautiful. But it was broad daylight, and they saw not a soul around, and they wondered. Everyone was fast asleep, as they had been taught. Even the cattle had been taught to sleep by day. The two strangers were amazed by what they saw, and they wandered around town till evening. And suddenly the whole town woke up and went about its nightly business. The two men, let us continue reading further. The two men were hungry. Now that the shops were open, they went to buy some groceries. To their astonishment, they found that everything cost the same, a single dudu. Whether they bought a measure of rice or a bunch of bananas, it cost a dudu. The Guru and his disciple were delighted. They had never heard of anything like this. They could buy all the food they wanted for a rupee. When they had cooked and eaten, the Guru realized that this was a kingdom of fools and it wouldn't be a good idea for them to stay there. There is no place for us. This is no place for us. Let's go, he said to his disciple. But the disciple didn't want to leave the place. Everything was cheap here. All he wanted was good, cheap food. So now the Guru and the disciple came to this kingdom of fools and they saw that by evening, the whole day there was no one around. By evening, the shops opened, and they were very surprised that when they went to buy something, everything cost the same, just one to do. And so they bought a measure of rice and a bunch of bananas. and they were so delighted that they got everything so cheap they could buy all the food they wanted just for a rupee. So they cooked and they ate, and they saw that the Guru realized that this was not the place where he should stay. So he said, "This is not a good place, so let us go." But the disciple was very happy. He got such cheap food that he decided to stay there. The Guru said, "They are all fools. This won't last very long, and you can't tell what they'll do to you next." But the disciple wouldn't listen to the Guru's wisdom. He wanted to stay. The Guru finally gave up and said, "Do what you want, I'm going." And he left. The disciple stayed on. He ate his fill every day, bananas and ghee and rice and wheat, and grew fat like a street side scarred sacred bull. One bright day, a thief broke into a rich merchant's house. He had made a hole in the wall and sneaked in, and as he was carrying out his loot, the wall of the old house collapsed on his head and killed him on the spot. His brother ran to the king and complained, "Your Highness, when my brother was pursuing his ancient trade, a wall fell on him and killed him. This merchant is to blame. He should have built a strong, good wall. You must punish the wrongdoer and compensate the family for this injustice." The king said, "Justice will be done, don't worry," and at once summoned the owner of the house. So, since the Guru came to the conclusion that this was not a good place to be in, who knows what these fools will do next, so he decided to leave the place and go, and he coaxed his disciple to follow him. But the disciple wouldn't do so. He decided to stay there as he got everything very cheap. So the Guru finally gave up. He stopped coaxing and persuading him, and he said, "Do what you want, I am going." And his disciple stayed and ate his fill, bananas, ghee, rice, wheat, and he grew fat like a sacred bull, like a holy bull. And then one day, a thief, a robber, broke into a rich merchant's house, and as he was carrying out his loot, the wall fell down and killed him on the spot. So his brother went to the king and complained and said that it was this person, this merchant, who is to blame. He did not build a nice, good, strong wall, and so you must punish the wrongdoer and compensate his business for this injustice. So the king promised him, "Justice will be done, don't worry," and at once summoned the owner of the house. So the owner of the house was called. Then, when the merchant came there, the king questioned him, "What's your name?" "Such and such, your highness." "Were you at home when the dead man burgled your house?" "Yes, my lord. He broke it and the wall was weak. Then it fell on him. The accused pleads guilty." "Your wall killed this man's brother. You have murdered a man. We have to punish you." "Lord," said the helpless merchant, "I didn't put up the wall. It's really the fault of the man who built the wall. He didn't build it right. You should punish him." "Who is that?" "My lord, this wall was built in my father's name. I know the man. He's an old man now. He lives close by. Nearby, the king sent out messengers to bring in the bricklayer who had built the wall. They brought him tied hand and foot. "You there, did you build this man's wall in his father's time?" "Yes, my lord, I did." "What kind of a wall is this that you built? It has fallen on a poor man and killed him. You've murdered him. We have to punish you by death." Before the king could order the execution, the poor bricklayer pleaded, "Please listen to me before you give your orders. It's true I built this wall and it was no good, but that was because my mind was not on it. I remember very well a dancing girl who was going up and down that street all day with her anklets jingling, and I couldn't keep my eyes or my mind on the wall that I was building. You must get that dancing girl. I know where she lives." "You're right. The case deepens. We must look into it. It is not easy to judge such complicated cases. Let's get that dancer wherever she is." So, here as we can see, when uh, when the merchant arrived, the king questioned him and asked him what his name was, and he told his name. And then he asked him if he was at home when the dead man came to rob the house. He said yes, he was. He broke in and the wall was weak, so it fell on him. But the accused pleads guilty, and he says that your wall killed that man's brother and that you murdered a man. But the helpless merchant said, "Sorry, Lord, I didn't put up the wall. It was the fault of the man who built it. He didn't build it right, so you shouldn't punish me, you should punish him." Then he asked him, "Who is that?" He said, "This wall was built during my father's time. I know the man, he is very old now, he lives nearby." So the king sent messengers to bring in the bricklayer who built the wall. They brought him and they tied him hand and foot. And so the king asked him, "You there, did you build this man's wall in his father's time?" He said, "Yes, my lord, I did." "What kind of a wall is this that you built? It has fallen on the poor man." So he asks him, and he says that you didn't do your job well, so because of you, you murdered a man, and so now you have to be punished to death. But before the king could order the execution, the poor bricklayer pleaded. He says, "Please listen to me before you give your orders. It's true, I built the wall, but it's not my fault. I couldn't concentrate on the wall because in front of me I saw a girl with anklets jingling, and she kept on walking to and fro, going up and down the street." So he says, "It's not my fault, it's the fault of that dancing girl." And so the king agreed to what he said, and he said, "Oh, the case deepens. We must look into it, and it's not easy to judge such complicated cases." So he said, "Let's get the dancer wherever she is." So the dancing girl now was an old woman. She came trembling to the court. "Did you walk up and down that street many years ago while this poor man was building a wall? Did you see him?" "Yes, my lord. I remember it very well." "So you did walk up and down with your anklets jingling. You were young and you distracted him, so he built a bad wall." So the king called for the dancing girl, who was now an old lady, and he inquired of her as to uh, like had she done such a thing? Did she go up and down with her anklets jingling, and that distracted the bricklayer, the mason, and that was the reason why he built such a bad wall? And she said she remembered it and she agreed that she had done what the king suggested. So it had fallen on a poor burglar and killed him. "You've killed an innocent man. You'll have to be punished." She thought for a minute and said, "My lord, wait. I know now why I was walking up and down the street. I had given some gold to the goldsmith to make some jewelry for me. He was a lazy scoundrel. He made so many excuses and said he would give it now and he would give it then, and so on all day. He made me walk up and down to his house a dozen times. That was when the bricklayer saw me. It's not my fault, it's the damn goldsmith's fault." So, here, when the king calls the dancing girl and inquires, she agrees that she had done that. But she said, Do you know the reason why? I had given some gold to the goldsmith to make jewelry, and he was a lazy man. So he made so many excuses that he would give it now, he would give it then, all and so he kept on making all kind of excuses the whole day long, and he made her walk up and down to his house several times. This was when the bricklayer saw me, and it was not, she said, it was not her fault. It was the damn goldsmith's fault. It was not her fault. So poor thing, she's absolutely right, thought the king, weighing the evidence. We've got the real culprit at last, and that was the goldsmith. So he said, "Call for the goldsmith wherever he is hiding at once." The king bailiffs are the people who are supposed to enforce the law that is made. They searched for the goldsmith who was hiding in a corner of the shop. When he heard the accusation against him, he had his own story to tell. "My lord," he said, "I am a poor goldsmith. It's true I made this dancer come many times to my door. I gave her excuses before I could finish because I couldn't finish making her jewelry before I finished the rich man's or merchant's orders. They had a wedding coming and they couldn't wait. You know how impatient rich men are. Who is this rich merchant who kept you from finishing this poor woman's jewelry and made her walk up and down, which distracted the bricklayer, which made a mess of his wall, which has now fallen on an innocent man and killed him? Can you name him?" So the goldsmith named the merchant, and he was none other than the original owner of the house whose wall had uh, fallen. Now justice has come full circle, thought the king, back to the merchant. When he was rudely summoned back to the court, he arrived crying, "It wasn't me, but my father who ordered the jewelry. He is dead, and I am innocent." But the king consulted a minister and ruled decisively. "It's true, your father is the true murderer. He is dead, but somebody must be punished in his place. You've inherited everything from that criminal father of yours, his riches as well as his sins. I know at once, even when I set eyes on you, that you were at the root of this horrible crime. You must die. And as he ordered a new stake to be made ready for the execution, as the servants sharpened the stake and got it ready for the final impaling of the criminal, it occurred to the minister that the rich merchant was somehow too thin to be properly executed on the stake. He appealed to the king's common sense. The king too worried about it. So, here as we can see, after the woman, dancing girl was called, she said it wasn't her fault. It was the goldsmith's fault. The king's So the goldsmith came there and the king searched and found him. He said, I'm just a poor goldsmith. And it was true that I made this dancer come so many times. But he said I couldn't finish making her jewelry be- because he finished the rich merchant's order. They had a wedding, and so he had to do that work first. And he said, you know how impatient rich men are. And then the king asked him, who is this rich merchant who kept you from finishing this poor woman's jewelry and making her walk up and down, distracting the bricklayer? So he said that it was the goldsmith named the merchant, and he was the original owner of the house whose wall had fallen down. Now justice had come full circle. So the king thought the king when he was called back to the court, and he arrived there crying, it wasn't me, it was my father who ordered the jewelry. The merchant said, he is dead, but I am innocent. So the king consulted his minister and said, that is it true? It's true, your father is the true murderer. He is dead, but somebody has to be punished. Now it's good that you must take the punishment in place of your father. And he said, so now you must die. And he ordered a new stake to be ready for the execution. As the servants sharpened the stake and got it ready for the final impaling of the criminal, it occurred to the minister that the rich merchant was somehow too thin to be properly executed on the stake. He appealed to the king's common sense. The king too worried about it. Then he said, what shall we do? He said, when it suddenly struck him that all they needed to do was find a man fat enough to fit the stake. The servants were immediately sent all over town looking for the man who would fit the stake, and their eyes fell on the disciple who had fattened himself for months on bananas and rice and wheat and ghee. So, when the goldsmith was called and asked as to why he had not completed that work, he said he did the rich merchant's jewelry instead. And then, so they decided to punish the goldsmith. But, and they said, that man said, but it was not I, it was my father who did all that. And they found that this man was too thin to be impaled on a stick, and so they decided to look for a person who was fat enough to fit the stake. And then they came to the disciple uh, of that guru, of that monk. And so they found him. He had been eating rice and ghee and so many other things, bananas and wheat, and so he had become really fat. Now, so when he was caught, he asked, what have I done wrong? I'm innocent. I'm a sannyasi, he cried. That may be true, but it's the royal decree that we should find a man fat enough to fit the stake, they said, and carried him to the place of execution. He remembered his wise guru's words, this is a city of fools. You don't know what they will do next. While he was waiting for his death, he prayed to his guru in his heart, asking him to hear his cry wherever he was. The guru saw everything in a vision. He had magic powers. He could see far, and he could see the future as he could see the present and the past. He arrived at once to save the disciple who got himself into such a scrape through his love of food. That means he got into such a problem, into such trouble, just because he loved eating. And as soon as he arrived, he scolded the disciple and told him something in a whisper. And he went to the king and addressed him, O wisest of kings, who is greater, the guru or the disciple? Of course, the guru, no doubt about it. Why do you ask? Then put me to the stake first. Put my disciple to death after me. So, here when they found the disciple who was fat enough to be impaled on a stick, then he said, He remembered his guru's wise his his uh, guru's words saying that this is a city of fools, you don't know what they will do next. And while he was waiting for his death, he prayed to his guru in his heart, asking him to hear his cry. And the guru saw everything in a vision. He had magic powers and he could see far, he could see the future. He saw what was happening to his disciple and he decided to save him. Then as soon as he arrived, he scolded the disciple and told him. Then he went to the king and he said, "O wisest of kings, who is greater, the guru or the disciple?" The guru said, the king said, "The guru, of course, no doubt about it. Why do you ask?" Then he said, "Put me to the stake first. Put my disciple to death after me. Let me die first." When the disciple heard this, he understood and began to clamor. He began to shout, "Me first! You brought me here first. Put me to death first, not him." Then the guru and the disciple now got into a fight. Who should go first? The king was puzzled by this behavior. He asked the guru, "Why do you want to die? We chose him because we needed a fat man." The guru said, "You shouldn't ask me such questions. Put me to death first." "Why? There's some mystery here. As a wise man, you must make me understand." Though so, when the guru came there in order to free his disciple, he whispered something in his disciple's ear and told him to do as he instructed him. And then they went to the king and he said, "Who do you think is greater, the guru or the disciple?" So the king said, "The guru." So he said, "Okay, then put me to death first, and then afterwards my disciple." And he kept on asking to be killed first. So the king wanted to know that why does the guru want to die when everyone wants to live? But he said there's some mystery. Then the guru asked if he would promise to put him to death if he told you the reason, the secret. The king gave him his word and said, "Yes, I will." The guru took him aside out of the servant's earshot and whispered to him, "Do you know why we want to die right now? The two of us? We've been all over the world, but we've never found a city like this one or a king like you. And that stake is the stake of the God of justice. It's new. It has never had a criminal on it. Whoever dies on it first will be reborn as the king of the country, and whoever goes next will be the future minister. We are sick of our ascetic life. It would be nice to enjoy ourselves as king and minister. Now keep your word, my lord, and put us to death, me first." So the king was now thrown into a deep thought. He didn't want to lose the kingdom to someone else in the next round of life. He needed time. So he ordered the execution postponed to the next day and talked in secret with his minister. "It's not right for us to give over the kingdom to others in the next life. Let's go on to the stake ourselves and we'll be reborn as king and minister again. Holy men do not tell lies," he said, and the minister agreed. So he told the executioners, "We'll send the criminals tonight. When the first man comes, put him to death first. Then do the same to the second man. Those are my orders. Don't make any mistake." So now, when the king came to know the secret that the guru and the disciple, both of them wanted to be killed, he said that why should they get all the benefit? So, since that stake is the stake of the God of justice, it's new, it doesn't never had a criminal. Whoever died would be reborn as the king. And so he said, "Why should I allow that guru and the disciple to be born as king and the minister?" He said, "It is I and my minister who should die at the stake." So he went and ordered the execution postponed. He talked with his minister, and then they both agreed that holy men do not tell lies, and so they agreed to die. And they told the executioners, "We will send the criminals. When the first man comes, put him to death first, and then do the same to the second man." And those were his orders, not to make any mistake. So that night, the king and the minister went to the prison, released the guru and the disciple, disguised themselves as the two, and they arranged beforehand with loyal servants were taken to the stake and they were promptly executed. So that night, as the king and his minister had planned and they had instructed the executioner, they went to the prison, they released the guru and the disciple and disguised themselves as a guru and disciple. And so they went with their loyal servants, they were taken to the stake and they were promptly, means very quickly, executed. So, children, When the bodies were taken down to be thrown to the crows and vultures, the people panicked. They saw the dead bodies of the king and the minister, and the whole city was in confusion. All night they mourned and discussed the future of the kingdom. Some people thought of the Guru and the disciple and caught up with them as they were preparing to leave the town unnoticed. We need, we people need a king and a minister, said someone. Others agreed. They begged the Guru and the disciple to be their king and their minister. It didn't take many arguments to persuade the disciple, but it took longer to persuade the Guru. Then they finally agreed to rule the king of the kingdom of the foolish king and the silly minister on one condition that they could change all the old laws. And from then on, night would again become night, and day would again become day, and you could get nothing for the to do. This became like any other normal place. So, children, as we can see, as the king and his minister wanted to be killed on that stake, they died the way they wanted. But when their bodies were taken down in order to be thrown to crows and vultures, the people started panicking. They saw the dead bodies of the king and the minister, and so they realized that there was no one to look after the administration of the kingdom. The city was in confusion. They mourned and they discussed the future of the kingdom. Some people thought of the Guru and the disciple, and they caught up with them as they were preparing to leave. And they said, we need a king and a minister. And others agreed. They begged the Guru and the disciple to be their king and minister. So they agreed to rule the kingdom of the foolish king, the silly minister, on the condition that they could change all the old laws. So from then on, night was not day and day was not night, but night would again be night and day would again be day. And no one could get anything for a to do. And so it became like any other normal place. So this goes on to show that one should not remain in the kingdom of fools, but one should quickly exit from the kingdom of fools and go to a place where there are wise people. So we need to learn a lesson from this. Never keep company of fools, but always seek the company of wise and intelligent people. Now let us see the question answers of this lesson. What are the two strange things the Guru and his disciple find in the kingdom of fools? The first thing is that during the daytime, no one was around. There was no one working, no one was seen anywhere in the streets of the kingdom. And the second thing was that as soon as the sun set and it was nightfall, everybody began working very, very hard. Not only that, they had trained their cattle and all the other animals to do the same thing. Then, everyone in the kingdom of fools, a bag of rice, a bunch of bananas, everything cost one to do. The guru is astonished, and the disciple was very excited to realize that food was so cheap in the kingdom. Why does the disciple decide to stay in the kingdom of fools? Is that a good idea? The disciple loved food. He was extremely excited to see such food available for, hardly any money. As he wanted to relish more and more food, he stayed back in the kingdom, and his decision was not a good one as he finally got into trouble. He was almost going to be killed. Although he was innocent, the king's men took him for execution as they needed a fat man who could be killed easily on the stake. Name all the people who are tried in the king's court and give the reasons for their trial. The rich merchant who was the owner of the house was tried because his wall collapsed. Later on, he was tried and held guilty on behalf of the dead father who had ordered the goldsmith to deliver the ornaments in a very hasty manner, due to which he could not deliver the dancing girl's ornaments. And then, second, the bricklayer who had built the weak wall for constructing the wall which collapsed. Then, next, the dancing girl was tried for distracting the bricklayer as she walked in the lane again and again. The jingling sound of the anklets distracted the bricklayer, because of which he constructed a weak wall. The next was the goldsmith, who was tried because it was due to him that the dancing girl had to walk up and down the lane again and again. The rich merchant's dead father was tried because he had ordered the goldsmith to deliver his ornaments first, as there was a wedding in his family. Due to that order, the goldsmith was unable to make the dancing girl's ornaments in time. Now, the next question: who is the real culprit according to the king? Why does he escape punishment? According to the king, the real culprit was the merchant's dead father. As he was dead, he could not be punished, and in place of him, the son who inherited all his property was to be punished. The merchant escaped the punishment as the minister felt that he was too thin to be killed on the stake. What are the Guru's words of wisdom? When does the disciple remember them? The Guru had told his disciple that the place was a this that particular place was a kingdom for fools, and it was unsafe to live there. He asked his disciple to leave the place at once. The disciple was reminded of the Guru's words of wisdom when he landed into trouble. When the king's men were about to take him for execution, he prayed to his Guru and asked him to save his life. Then the next question: how does the Guru manage to save his disciple's life? Well, the Guru was a wise and intelligent man. He trapped the foolish king in his talks. He said that as he was the Guru, he was senior to his disciple, and so he should be killed first. The king got confused to see the Guru's eagerness to die. He asked him the reason for it. On being promised that he would be killed first, the Guru said that as the stake is a new one, it had not killed any criminal. He added that the person who would be killed would be reborn as the king of the kingdom. The second person who would be killed by at the stake would be reborn as the minister. So the king considered the Guru to be genuine and told the minister that they should not lose the kingdom in the next birth. In this way, the king decided to save his kingdom and get himself and his minister killed by on the stake in place of the Guru and his disciple. Hence, the Guru saved his disciple's life. Now, in Shakespeare's plays, the fool is not really foolish. If you have read or seen Shakespeare's plays, such as King Lear, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, you may talk about the role of the fool. And do you know any stories in your language about wise fools such as Tenali Rama or Gopal Bhar? You can also read about them in Ramanujan's collection of folk tales. Now, the suggested reading topics are Tales from Shakespeare by Charles and Mary Lamb. They are the ones who have authored this book. Folk Tales from India, a selection of oral tales from 22 languages, selected and edited by A.K. Ramanujan, and Classic Folk Tales from around the world, edited by Robert Nye. So, if you do have time and the opportunity to read these books, then surely do so. Thank you, children. I hope you have understood this lesson well. Make sure you read it and then write question answers in your fair book. Thank you and have a nice day.